InnerQuest explores various pathways through which you can connect with the infinite wisdom of the universe and apply it to personal, professional, and spiritual growth. This program, featuring accomplished practitioners, educators, and authors, is provided by Infinity Foundation, an innovative center for holistic studies and research. We invite you to share this journey with us.
Hello, welcome to InnerQuest. My name is Jay Stone, your host for today, and our guest is Dave Gunning.
Hi.
Let me tell you a little bit about Dave. Dave has been an astrological consultant for the past 30 years. His readings include interpretation of a person's birth chart and 1 year's look ahead into the future. Dave also lectures, writes articles for Dell Horoscope magazine, and teaches several levels of astrology. Well, let's start out by defining astrology for our audience.
Astrology is basically any living creature's reaction or responses to planetary positions. That includes animals as well, not just human beings. We know that there's not an actual link, like a energy link between planets and people, but we as astrologers and metaphysicians believe that everything has a spiritual essence behind it. And that's what connects planets and how we behavior on the planet.
Well, there was this woman in my high school homeroom, and I always felt a close connection to her. And it turns out we were born on the same day in the same hospital.
Wow.
Yeah, but about 12 hours apart.
Okay.
But I mean, obviously I'm a man and a woman, and we're different in that way. But talk about why aren't people born the same day in the same place? You know, almost clones of each other if the planets are influencing us.
You said you were 12 hours apart. So
Yeah.
that's going to change your rising sign.
Okay.
Which is, if I can show you in the chart, the rising sign, you're a Leo rising. Now that other woman, was she born 12 hours before you or 12 hours after you? Do you know?
I think she was born before.
Okay. So she probably would have had Cancer rising. Now.
Okay, so that makes it a completely different
Oh, yeah.
chart.
Yeah.
Okay.
But there's a lot of similarities you have with her, but there's going to be some basic differences as well.
Yeah. Okay. All right. And do you consider astrology more art or more science?
It's actually both.
Yeah.
When you set up a chart, you have to use mathematical calculations, and you use the positions of the planets. So that's all based on astronomy. But where astronomy and astrology part ways is astrologers believe that those positions at birth of the planets have sort of a metaphorical or metaphysical meaning to it.
Okay.
And astronomy doesn't really go that route. They just say, well, these are the positions of the planets, and they locate them for everybody, but they don't give it actual meaning.
Now, today, isn't there like computer programs?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a computer program. It's called Solar Fire, and it's extremely efficient. And we don't have to do any of the calculations now. The computer does all that for you.
But you've been doing this for 30 years.
Right. And
how has your knowledge and practice of astrology changed in the last 30 years?
Oh, well, I have learned a lot, because it's not just learning astrology, it's learning what to say to people and how to say it, because
that's where the art, I guess, would come in.
That's where the art comes in. It's the art part is knowing what the planets mean and the signs and the houses and all that, but it's actually, in a way, you're kind of a counselor as well, because you're at times you have to tell people things that counselors would know. Now, I'm not a counselor, I'm a consultant, but you do have to counsel some people through some hard times.
Okay, I'm sure. Well, I would think the big things people come to you, relationships.
Oh, yeah, that's the biggest.
Money and health.
Yep, those, you got it. Those are in that order, too.
Yeah.
Relationships, marriage, that kind of thing. But money and career is big, and then health, I would say, is right after all those.
Yeah. Now, do you ever do couples? Like
Oh, yeah.
couples?
It's called synastry. It's where you take two charts and you put one over the other. I love doing synastry because people will come to me before they're going to get married. They're planning on getting married and they want to know how the marriage is going to go. So you look at all what are called the inner aspects between the two charts.
Now, didn't Ronald Reagan and President Reagan, I
Yes.
should say, give him
Well,
this title?
Nancy was very big into astrology. She had her own astrologer, Joan Kellogg, I think it was. But I think Ronald was into it too. But you can't get up in front of the country and say that I believe in astrology. That would probably knock him down a notch a little bit in terms of his credibility.
He seemed to have a great relationship with Nancy, and
Yes.
so,
Yep.
you know, just out of the closeness, the intimacy of the relationship,
Yeah.
he would probably listen to her and
Oh,
follow
yeah.
her.
I'm sure in secret they got together and she showed him a lot about his chart and when to do this or when to do that. I think when they had that peace accord with the Soviet Union, I think her astrologer planned that for them. So, yeah, a lot of his activities were planned through astrology.
Well, he still has quite a following today.
Yeah.
All right.
Sure does.
Now, most people know astrology from, you know, their daily horoscope. I used to read it.
Yes.
Now I occasionally look at it online. What do you think of, you know, like the horoscopes in the newspaper, you know, or online?
They serve a purpose in that they're entertaining, but let me just show you in the chart here. When you're looking at those horoscopes in the chart, they're just looking at this one little aspect right here, the sun. That's the circle with the dot in it. That's all they're looking at. They're just looking at one little tiny area of the chart. You can see how vast and large the entire chart is, so it's much more than just your sun sign.
Okay, now is that the chart you have there? Is that, you know, for the rest of my life? Is that just for today? Is it next for the next
No, this
year?
is your birth chart. This basically all the charts, when you direct the chart into the future, they are all based off of the birth chart. This doesn't change in terms of, this shows you what your lessons are here to learn, your strengths, your weaknesses, shows everything. But to direct a chart, I have to do another chart over this. Okay, so, but the birth chart, that's like the rock foundation of your life. It's a guidepost. It's sort of it's a guide of your life, and it shows you what lessons you're here to learn, and your strengths and weaknesses. A lot of things.
And I'm sure you looked at your birth chart many times over.
Too much.
Yeah. Well, how has your knowledge of your birth chart influenced the decisions and that you have made?
Very much. I look at not only the birth chart, but every year I look at mine and my wife's chart, and we look at our transits for the year, what's going to be happening. So, yeah, I have to look at it every year just to see what's going to be coming up, what challenges I have. For instance, last year I had just a terrible Saturn going on in my chart. It was squaring everything in my chart. And
well,
difficult.
People may not know what having a terrible Saturn or Saturn is.
Saturn is a difficult planet. It teaches us real difficult, hard lessons. Okay, teaches us discipline and responsibility, and not too many people like those words because it means work. But Saturn is a very important planet, and it basically teaches us how to deal with loss in our life, how to go on after we've lost something. I'm not talking about little things. I'm talking about the major things, like losing a spouse or losing a child, or losing your home through foreclosure or whatever. Basic loss. Saturn has a lot to do with that. It's not the only planet that deals with loss, but probably bigger than any others.
What other planets deal with loss?
Well, any hard aspects from Pluto, possibly even Neptune, the outer planets, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, have a lot to do with losses, okay? But they all deal with loss in a different way. With Uranus, for instance, you may lose something, but another door opens for you, brings in something new that you need to see. But the shock of losing it comes very quickly with Uranus.
Okay. Now, another thing I've noticed in daily horoscopes is they talk about the moon, like they'll mention a full moon or...
Right. The moon has to do with your feelings, your emotions, and the moon moves very fast. It moves through a sign every 2.5 days. So, and in fact, I tell my students, I encourage them to get one of these astrological calendars, which shows you the position of the moon daily. It's very important because the moon has to do with our feelings and emotions and moods, day-to-day moods.
And so how is like a full moon different than a new moon?
Well, in astrology, the new moon or a solar eclipse, new moons tend to bring in new cycles of energies.
Okay.
Whereas a lunar eclipse or a full moon tends to be more endings of cycles of things. Okay. Not necessarily bad. It just means that something is ending, but something new is coming in.
Well, I know the harvest moon.
Right.
That's a culmination of you know, a farmer's work.
Right. His basically his harvest. Yes.
Now, what does the word horoscope literally mean?
Well, horoscope, if you divide it in its two syllables, horoscope, horo means the hour, scope means view. So it's the view of the hour. It's actually the exact moment of your birth is what horoscope is all about. So the moment that the child exits the womb and puts out its first cry into the earth, that's the moment of birth. That's when we record the time. And it used to be where the baby was slapped on the bottom before they would cry. Now they just cry as soon as they exit the womb, basically. But it's that first cry. That's the moment of birth, and that's what you're viewing as your birth chart.
Now, could just a child be born a few minutes apart, let's say twins?
Yes.
Would that change the astrological?
It can. It can change it can change the rising signs a little bit. It'll change the degrees of the moon. But if it's just 4 minutes apart, they're going to be basically the same, as you know twins are. But there can be some differences in their
Well, what
life.
about, like, for example, my neighbors just had twins, but one is a boy, one is a girl.
Right.
You know, so how does the astrological, is there a difference in charts for a male and a female?
Well,
I guess better way to put it.
I mean, obviously, women have different things that they do than men, so that's going to be quite different. But they are going to be very similar in the way they behave, the way they act, the way they respond to things. So you're going to see a lot of similarities.
Okay. Can astrology predict a person's future?
Yeah, that's the basic question we all ask. That's a $64,000 question. Basically, it's not about predicting outcomes. It's about predicting possibilities. So can I give you an example?
Sure.
Let's say let's say a woman has Saturn, again, going through her 7th house of marriage, and it's squaring her sun sign. And I see this, and that cycle usually lasts about 9 months with Saturn. I would tell the person, I'll tell the woman, well, you might have some challenges here going on in your marriage, okay? And if you're already having some rough patches in your marriage, I would say to her, maybe you want to go for some counseling, something like that. Or talk to somebody. But I never tell them you're going to get divorced or you're going to get separated. Because now you're predicting an outcome. And you don't know. The astrologer doesn't know the outcome. He just knows the cycle of energy that the person is influenced by, and that tells you a lot, but it doesn't give you the final outcome. The final outcome is based on the person's willpower. Willpower still overrides the entire chart. Planets impel, but they don't compel you to do things.
Well, willpower, what about a higher power? You know, somebody's faith or beliefs.
Oh, that's very important. In fact, I've just finished doing a lecture for the Theosophical Society in Wheaton. I talked about the higher dimension of the planets. The sun, which is this symbol again right there, has to do with your inner willpower. But it also has to do with a higher will, a spiritual will. I like to get into the spiritual side of all the planets. So the sun's higher willpower is the willingness to give up things in your life and turn it over to a higher power.
So kind of like to live in the light or
Yes.
to become enlightened.
Yes. In fact, the higher octave planets, and that's these three right here, Pluto, Uranus, and Neptune, Those are the higher octave planets that we talk about, like in terms of, intuitive feelings, psychic feelings. That has a lot to do with Neptune. Uranus has to do with sudden changes in your life that bring in new cycles of energies. Pluto has to do with your gut feelings about things. But in order to respond to those higher planets, you have to get through what is called the rings of Saturn. Once you pass the rings of Saturn, then you can go on to the higher planets of enlightenment, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto.
And how old is the study of astrology?
Oh, well, as far as we know, it goes back to recorded civilization, probably about 3000 BC.
Well, but we've discovered planets.
Yes.
So, I mean, I would assume that with the discovery of a new planet,
Yes.
That would change things.
Yeah, in fact, there are two signs in astrology that don't have true rulers, and that's Virgo and Taurus, your sign.
Yeah.
And there's a movement in astrology that says that Ceres, which is an asteroid in the asteroid belt, may be the true ruler of Virgo. But we don't know the ruler of Taurus yet. So when we do, it'll bring in some new energies, some new thoughts on the subject of what planets rule what signs.
So does that mean Tauruses don't like to be ruled over?
Well, some Tauruses don't. Yeah, right. Tauruses are very, very determined people. They can be stubborn.
Yeah, agreed. And what sign is yours?
I'm an Aquarius.
Okay.
I'm also stubborn, too.
Yeah.
You and I are fixed signs in astrology.
And what does a fixed sign mean?
A fixed sign there's 4 signs that are fixed. It's Taurus, Leo, Scorpio, and Aquarius. Fixed signs are very determined. They're very stubborn. They get a project finished. See, the cardinal signs, that's Aries and Cancer and Capricorn and Libra, they are the architects. They're the planners, okay? But they turn the work over to the fixed signs. The fixed signs get the job done. Mm-hmm. Can I use an example of a house being built? The cardinal signs would be the ones that architect the house, zone the land and all that. Then they bring in the fixed sign type individuals, and they do all the work. They put in the concrete, they put in the electric, the plumbing, drywall, everything, and they make that a house. The mutable signs, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces, they're the ones that make that house a home. They sell it. They put it on the market. They disperse the energy. In other words, they get the word out. They're the marketers, the sellers.
Yeah, and so if a couple get together and they're both fixed signs,
right.
Is there a
they can butt heads. They
yeah.
can butt heads. But you have to look at the entire chart, not just the sun sign, okay? So you have to look at Venus and Mars, Sun, Moon, all the other planets.
All right. Well, you graciously did is that
yes.
the natal chart?
That's your birth chart, yes.
Okay. And you defined the natal chart for our audience already, right?
Yeah, it's the moment of birth. Yes.
Okay. And I have my birth certificate, and I gave you the day
right.
and even the time
right.
that's on my birth certificate.
Right.
So why don't you use my chart
okay.
to explain, let's say if you were meeting with a client,
mm-hmm.
why don't you just,
okay.
Treat me like a client.
All right, you're a client.
Okay.
All right. One thing that I noticed right away in your chart, you have Sun and Venus, these two symbols right here. They're right at the top of your chart. All this house right here, the 10th house, is your career house, okay? Mm-hmm. You have a lot of Taurus there. Sun conjunct Venus is one of the nicest aspects to have in astrology. That makes you warm, engaging. Mm-hmm. You like to talk to people. You love to express your feelings toward people. Mm. You're very approachable, okay? But that tends to be your public image. Now, there may be something more in terms of your private life that we can talk about with other planets. But having Sun conjunct Venus is very good because the person really loves themselves. Mm-hmm. And if you love yourself, you're going to love other people.
Yeah, I'd say it's an accurate assessment.
Yeah.
And I have had my chart done 2 or 3 times before, as
mm-hmm.
I told you,
yeah.
but nobody has ever explained it to me so yeah. succinctly and eloquently as you did. So thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
And so if somebody else comes to you with the chart, is that
mm-hmm.
the first thing you're going to look at?
You mean the sun?
Yes.
It depends. I like to look at the rising sign a lot, which you're a Leo rising. And Leos are they like to be out front. You like to be noticed. because your sun is right at the top of your chart.
Yeah.
And you like to be the one that everybody looks at, sees, and notices right away. You know, you like to be in the public eye, all right? And that's fine. That's good. That's a real good positive characteristic. But I look at probably the challenging areas of the chart and the area that the person is blessed. Your most blessed aspect is that Sun conjunct Venus in Taurus. I like that. It's very engaging.
Now, I don't claim to be an expert in astrology, but isn't Venus associated with love?
Yes.
The planet of
Venus
love.
has to do with love. It has to do with beauty. It has to do with appreciation of the arts. Okay. And see, you have a lot in Taurus. You got Sun, Venus, and Mercury in Taurus. Okay. Let me ask you this: do you love to? Your Mercury is trining your Jupiter in your chart. You love to learn things.
Oh yeah.
And you retain knowledge too, because you have Mercury in Taurus is a person who will be retentive. They'll remember the things that they learn.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so you have Venus there, you have Sun there, all at the top of the chart. That's very good placements for you. But you also have Sun opposite Neptune in your chart. Neptune's at the bottom of your chart, and it squares Uranus. So you have like a T-square, Sun opposite Neptune. It's also squaring Uranus.
So this is my challenge part.
This is one of your challenges, right?
Yeah.
Did you have, when you were growing up, I'm looking at now the Neptune opposing your Sun.
Yeah.
When you were growing up as a young man, say teenage years and into your 20s and 30s, did you have at times a problem with self-image? In other words, you would try maybe different things, then you realize, no, that's not who I am, and then you change it, you have to reinvent yourself. Uranus has a lot to do with reinventing yourself, and then you try something else. Try different things.
Well, I just think, I look at it as just the maturation process of unfolding.
Sure.
You know, I don't think I struggled with my self-image more than any other teenager or somebody, you know, in their 20s starting out in a career.
Okay.
So,
did you, okay, let me ask you this. And this is just looking at the Neptune on your nadir. And I'm just asking the question. I'm not sure if this is the case. Was there a case when you were growing up, like in school or in jobs that you had early on, did you have a tendency to get blamed for things that you weren't guilty of?
oh, sure.
I mean, like, you were the one that got caught, so to say. You weren't guilty. Somebody else was, but you took the blame.
I remember in high school, somebody took another classmate's purse.
Okay.
And so they were sending it around the room, and then it just happened to be I was holding it, and I got in trouble.
Yep.
And then another time.
Yeah, this is a pattern now.
Yeah.
That's the Neptune opposing your
Oh,
chart.
yeah. Another time, somebody lit a flare.
Okay.
And I guess he saw the principal coming, and he says, here, hold this.
So you got holding the bag again.
Yeah. I actually got suspended. The principal said I was trying to burn down the school, and there was no truth to that whatsoever.
See, Neptune is locked right to your fourth house cusp,
Yeah.
and it's opposing your Sun. That means you're going to get, you're going to be the one that's kind of the dupe that gets blamed for things that you're not guilty of.
Yeah, and I guess it's a theme that's repeated itself throughout my life.
Yeah.
And we can talk a little bit more after the show. But so how does this knowledge help me or one of your clients?
Well, when you know your strengths and weaknesses, it really helps you to, well, first of all, you're understanding yourself more, but then you can tolerate other people if you know their strengths and weaknesses as well. Okay? And that's really valuable because that really helps in terms of getting along with people in relationships. So yeah, knowing the strengths and weaknesses, and a chart shows both, strengths and weaknesses.
Sure.
You wouldn't be giving a fair reading to somebody unless you showed both of those sides of the person. It would be incomplete.
All right. What else in the chart do you see?
Okay. Well, your sun sign, or your rising sign, I should say, is Leo. It's ruled by the sun. Okay. Now your sun, that's the one that we were talking about. That's challenge. It's opposing your Neptune and squaring your Uranus. One of the lessons that you've had to learn in this lifetime is humility, because Leos, that's their lesson. And what you do is you look to the rising sign, you look to the ruler of that sign, which in your case is the sun, and then how it's aspected to the rest of the chart.
So everybody's rising sun is ruled by a different planet.
Different planet, right.
Okay.
Depending on what sign it is.
Okay.
So you're a Leo, and you like to be on stage, you're proud, and you like to have the attention drawn to you. But sometimes you need to learn a little bit more about humility at times too. But you have a combination of really positive aspects with your sun and some challenging aspects. You never use the words good or bad.
Yeah.
Just
what it is.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Positive or challenged.
Yeah. Well, and again with humility, I think it's a part of evolving
Sure.
or maturation.
Right.
I mean, obviously, when you get in your 40s and 50s,
right.
you
See,
know,
this
you
was
really
more
get
toward the
humbled.
beginning of your life, those
Yeah.
challenges
Yeah.
that you had to deal with.
Agreed.
You're not the same person now
Yeah.
as you were. But even when you think you've learned the lesson a lot of times, the lesson comes back to you in full force from somewhere else, sort of blindsides you at times. You think you've learned the lesson, but you really haven't.
And so could you look at that chart and say, well, I would be good with, a good mate for
Yes.
a woman with, okay.
Yeah, in a man's chart, you look at the female planets, okay, and that's Venus and the moon. So, and I don't know what sign your wife is, but you would be good with Taurus women, because you're Venus. Venus has to do with romance in a man's chart, okay? The moon, you're a very sensitive person. You have moon in Pisces. So you'd also be compatible with Pisces women. In a woman's chart, she looks at the sun sign and the Mars sign. Whatever those signs are in, those are the signs that she would be attracted to.
Yeah, and why would be a woman different than a man? Oh, because you just mentioned
yeah,
the
because you're looking at, in her
female
chart,
planets.
you're looking at the male planets, and in the male chart, you're looking at the female planets.
You know, we've only got a couple minutes left. I mean,
Okay.
time's flying by, and
Yeah.
I just got through, a portion of these.
Sure.
What about aspects, and what is their
Okay.
significance in a natal
That's
chart?
the most important area of the chart. That has to do, the aspects, well, the ones I just explained, like your sun opposite Neptune or sun squaring Uranus, those are aspects. They're the angular relationships between planets on the wheel. And those aspects are really important because they talk about your psychological behavior. So you'll first learn about the signs and the houses, then they talk about the planets, and then how the planets relate to one another on the chart, and those are aspects.
Okay, and there's a difference between hard and soft
Yes.
aspects. Can you elaborate?
Aspects are about angles between planets. So when you have a hard aspect, that's like a square, it's a 90-degree angle. That's like your sun square Uranus. But a soft aspect, soft major aspect, is like a trine, like your Mercury trine Jupiter, which is your eagerness to learn.
All right. I think, do we got to wrap it up here? All right. Hey, it's been a pleasure. For more information about Dave Gunning, Infinity Foundation, the Inner Quest Talk Show, stay tuned to the credits at the end. Until next time, wish you good health, good fortune, and good spirits. Thank you again.
Thank
I
you.
really
You're
enjoyed
welcome.
it.
For more information about this show, our guests, Infinity Foundation, or any of our other programs, please visit our website, infinityfoundation.org, or call us at 847